This is a clip from the Red Cow Arcade podcast.
Have you ever seen the Ewok movies?
No, I have. Well, no, I remember going to a DVD store where you can like sell DVDs and buy DVDs, and they were playing it on a TV. And I remember like looking up like, oh, there's some Ewoks. I mean, it's probably Return of the Jedi. And then I like turned away and looked back. I'm like, no, there's something really wrong with these Ewoks.
Yeah. Well, that's accurate.
And then I was like, this is something else. And then I noticed like the packaging near the TV. It was like a Ewoks. I didn't even know these existed. And I was already an adult by the time I saw that. So
I continue to think that they're really. I'm like, what? I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan, and somehow I never made the time for the Ewok movies, even as a child.
Oh yeah. I had a Wicket action figure, and I didn't know these existed.
Very odd. And so I've been introducing Gloria to Star Wars, and it came on kind of all at once, where I think it started with a bedtime story. She always, I don't know about your kids. We do like three books, and then we turn off the lights, and I lay with her until she falls asleep. And sometimes that can go on a while. Sometimes she gets the sillies. Sometimes I get the sillies, but it goes on a while. And she almost always, especially if Nina reads her the books, she's like, okay, thanks, Mom. Turns to Dad. All right, Dad, now you tell me a story. She goes, tell me a story with your mouth. I was like, well, even the book would have been with my mouth. But anyway, so I'm just like, I don't know. I'll tell you the story of Star Wars. I start talking about A New Hope. And goddamn, man, if she doesn't follow me for that journey, she knows, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, and the Force will be with you always. You know, she's right there as if it's Wizard of Oz or something. Like, and when you start to tell the stories, you realize like this isn't so bad to have to explain to a child. Like this is pretty easy. And the same goes for Empire, and the same goes for Jedi. And then we actually, because the days have gone on, we did backtrack. And I was like, "Do you want to hear the story of how he became Darth Vader?" And she's like, "Yeah." Very difficult to explain the prequels to a 4-year-old.
But how do you there's a trade dispute. And
well,
you see, there's a trade dispute in the little Chinese aliens.
Chancellor Palpatine and Viceroy Gunray, they meet in secret.
Well, that's Alex Jones. There's a clip of him describing the prequels, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, because he speaks about it with the same conviction that he speaks about anything. It might as well be reality. These little Chinese aliens, the whole thing's geopolitical. Chancellor Palpatine, he's got the documents. They're declassified. This is CNN reporting on this.
The Gungans, there's chemicals in the water.
The Gungans are hanging out at Bohemian Grove, worshipping some kind of owl god. A lot of creepy sex stuff. Anyway,
that's what they mean by the planet core.
They're talking about planet core. They're talking about the inside of a man's legs. It's creepy sex stuff. And it's all tied together. They all know about it. They meet in secret.
Qui-Gon's got the documents.
Qui-Gon's got the documents. So anyway, yeah, very hard to explain the prequels. And then very hard to explain the sequels as well. Because you're like, well, what I realize is I'm like, all right, so I know this has been said before, but it just really came to the forefront of my mind when I was like, so Leia and Luke are now really old. The Empire's back. And she's like, why? I'm like, the Empire's back. and I'm like, and the rebels are back. And she's like, but I thought that. I'm like, yeah, I thought that too. And I'm like, and there's a new guy, Han Solo's kid. It's Darth Vader. He's Darth Vader, and there's a new Emperor, and it really is the Emperor, actually, but we'll get there in a minute. And there's a droid, and he's got the plans for a new Death Star. Yeah, a new Death Star. I'm like, oh my god, this is repeating itself, and then it completely goes off the rails from there. But the originals hold up for sure. So she's like, let's watch Star Wars. So we watched the Harmy despecialized editions, of course. Nerd Dad hashtag. And I don't know. It's just like, if we're gonna watch, we watch it on the nice big TV here, and I'm like,
Yeah.
The Disney Plus color corrected, specialized. I don't know where I'm at with these movies. Like, it just feels like I'm giving you a really impure experience. So we went back to the Harmies, and she was enjoying A New Hope. A New Hope's a little slow. You know, she'll stay with anything if you explain it to her every step of the way. She really. If I pick up my phone for 1 second, she's like, Dad, TV. Like, tell me what's happening now. Tell me what they're feeling. Tell me what they're thinking. She, of course, loves Princess Leia. And yeah, it does make you really appreciate the fact, like, you're like, her planet blows up, man. Like, every family member, anybody she's ever, like, the planet's blown to fucking bits. She never mentions it again for the whole trilogy, actually. I think after it happens, it's not mentioned outside of Obi-Wan being like, I think something blew up. And then, like, when Obi-Wan dies, like, he's known Luke for a day. He's like, I can't believe he's gone. And, like, Carrie Fisher has to, like protect him from that pain. Like, went through something. It's a little different. I mean, Lucas, come on, man. You're a genius.
My martial arts teacher is dead.
Yeah, exactly. As the meme said. So anyway, she's like, can we go to part 3? Because I had already told her the story. So I was like, yeah, we can watch Jedi. And she was totally captured by the Jabba the Hutt stuff. She likes Labyrinth, and that's like very That's very like,
yeah.
There's a little bit of overlap there in the early 80s.
That was the first Star Wars thing I've ever seen, was that opening. Like, it was playing on a TV, like a little tiny CRT at a friend's house. I think it was just on cable. And I remember just like seeing the green lightsaber, seeing like Jabba the Hutt and all that stuff. And then I had to like leave to go back to my parents' house. But I remember seeing that and I'm being like, okay, I have to check out the rest of whatever that was, because that was amazing. That first, in the intro to Return of the Jedi is still one of my favorite Star Wars things.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, if somehow that movie could have kept up that energy the whole time, then of course it would compare extremely well to Empire. But then we get to Ewoks, perhaps the most controversial element of Return of the Jedi. Before there were prequels to complain about, there were Ewoks to complain about. And she fucking loved them. Teddy bears, man. She loves teddy bears. And so and it was really funny. You know that part in Jedi when one of the Ewoks gets shot dead and the other one like mourns him, and it's like,
oh yeah,
they take a moment out to just have a really sad moment. And by the way, it's not the first time that happens in that movie. There's the Rancor thing where the fat Rancor trainer runs up to him and he's in disbelief about it. And you think that's going to be enough. You think they're like, all right, they had their moment. They gave you like an empathetic thing. And then like I cut back to him and he's crying with an alien about what happened. I'm like, they really wanted you to be like, okay, you know, the Rancor's death was tragic. So I think that guy, Richard Marquand, or whoever directed Jedi, I think, maybe, is he like a vegan or something? Is there something like, he's obviously like a very compassionate person. He's worried about innocents dying. But she goes, I think an Ewok died.
Ewok died over here.
I think one of the Ewoks died. So she goes, I'm like, you know, it was the next night. I was like, you want to watch more Star Wars? And she said, yeah, what has more Ewoks in it? And I want,
wow.
I was so ready to be like, nothing. And then I was like, wait. That's untrue. There's 2 movies and a TV series. There's a cartoon series called Ewoks. And I was like, and surely it's all in Disney Plus, right? Sure enough, man, 1080p, you got it. Like,
really? It's there? I wouldn't have thought.
There's a section under the Star Wars library called like Star Wars Legacy, I think. You gotta
Star Wars, please forget about this.
You gotta scroll down to get to it. You gotta scroll past a lot of Ahsoka. A lot of stuff that they're pushing, but you can get to it. And so we watched, Ewok Adventure: The Caravan of Courage. And I'd like to tell you about it. It starts off with, so I really don't know the history of these movies or why they exist, but it was shot 4:3. It feels very much like a Sunday afternoon movie. You know, the Sunday afternoon movie when we were kids?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that feel? It's got that feel. Like, it's a movie, but not much of a movie. And it's like reasonably high budget. They had like huge matte paintings. They, of course, had a lot of costumed characters. They had a spaceship at one point. And eventually they get into kind of like Ray Harryhausen type monster stuff. And that's probably the coolest thing about it, actually. But the movie opens with like two adults, like kind of like community theater actors being like, Mace, Sindel, we're not mad at you, come out. And then this giant thing called a Gorax, a giant like monster that's composited, like just like runs towards them, and they both go like, ah! And it cuts away. And then we enter the Ewoks. And there's a moment where you're worried that it's going to be like the Christmas special, where it's going to be just Ewoks like chirping at each other for 45 minutes. But that doesn't go on for too long. The Ewoks, centered around Wicket and his family, stumble across two children. One who's like maybe 13, a boy named Mace, and a very little girl named Sindel. Mace is like, he's trying, but he's one of the most off-putting actors ever put to screen. He is like, he's meant to be kind of brash and kind of, there's a little bit of like a Luke Skywalker-ness about him, but he's like a big asshole. He's like rejecting and untrusting of the Ewoks at every turn. And the little girl is like extremely good, I think. She's like really earnest. She has to play sick at one point. She has to cry. It looks like she's like it looks like she's really experiencing this Ewok adventure in real life. To be, like maybe they set things up on the stage to make her believe it too much or something. But the plot is that their family was traveling. They crashed onto the forest moon of Endor. They do play John Williams' score through this movie. You know, dun 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 dun. And they're looking for their parents who have been missing now for several, I think like a year or something. And so the boy is taking care of her. And they eventually find out that this giant monster which all Ewoks fear, this Gorbax or Gorax thing, is what has them, and they have to go save them. And they go see one of the shaman Ewoks who gives each of them a magical item. So it becomes kind of like Fellowship of the Ring at this point. So that's the caravan. It's the sort of fellowship of the Ewoks. And they all go on an adventure where along the way, they encounter some like dark magic where they have to use the item to defeat the dark magic. And they eventually save the parents. And they have to have this kind of big, there's like stop motion stuff. There's a rubber suit monsters. And if you're into that kind of thing, if you're into like B-movie, James Rolfe type stuff, like it's actually not, it is terrible, but in a great way. So maybe
it's very interesting. Nobody talks about this production at all.
Well, so then there's a second one.
I didn't even know there was a second one.
There's a second one. So you can, if you're on Disney Plus, you just scoot right onto the right and click play. Because my kid is totally into it. Now this one is called Ewok Adventure: The Battle for Endor. As a Star Wars fan, yeah, as a Star Wars fan, I'm going like Battle of Endor. I enjoy that. Let's take a look. I don't think Endor is even mentioned once in this movie. They're not playing the John Williams score anymore, and the Ewoks are starting to speak English. They say a couple of English words in the first one. They're like space cruiser and stuff. And Warwick Davis is in it. He plays Wicket. He's in it. But they're now just straight up. They're like, Sindel, you go with Wicket? They're just talking English. It's fucking weird.
Do their like mouths move or whatever? Or?
Maybe slightly. And they're very decrepit, like you said. Like they're it's like the difference in budget just it doesn't take much. Like if you cheapen out on an Ewok costume, they can go from cute to frightening very fast. So here's what's fucked up, man. The whole first movie is about saving these parents and reuniting this family. The whole movie is about that. And there's a shot the following year, or a shot around the same time, and they released it the next year. It's 84 and 85 is when they were released. Again, I assume that it must have been on television. In the opening scene, a bunch of rubber-masked marauders, monsters, scary-looking dudes if you're 4. I ought to know. Kill the entire family except for the little girl.
Wow. Even the boy?
And, yes, they kill the boy. They kill the mom. They're both played by the same actors as the last one. But the dad, only for one scene, is played by the guy who plays the principal from Breakfast Club. The guy who says, "Don't mess with the bull, young man, you'll get the horns." The guy who Barry Manilow raided his wardrobe. But he dies, and so now Sindel is in the care of the Ewoks, and there's a witch that is teamed with these marauders, and they capture the majority of the Ewoks. So now a pared down group. They run into there's kind of an old man, like a prospector who's also lost on the Forest Moon. They team up with him and they have to save everybody, and it becomes more monsters, and they really up the monster quotient in this one. It becomes like the Psycho Gorman type prosthetics. You're kind of seeing more of that type stuff in this movie. But it's the same sort of fare. It's just all a lot scarier for some reason. And the stakes are jacked the fuck up right from the first scene. I don't know, man. It's like,
Is nobody talk about it because it's not interesting at all?
I think it's interesting. I think it's extremely interesting. I think it's interesting in a similar way as interrupting the Book of Boba Fett to tell different stories that are not Boba Fett. It's like just a very weird creative decision. Like by the time the original trilogy was wrapped, right? If you were a smart business person and you were like, but we shouldn't stop the money train. Let's do something else that will be huge. 2 made-for-TV Ewok movies is not necessarily where my head would go, but that's the money they followed. And then there's a series that's also on Disney Plus, and this is
that's the
cartoon series. Now get this. I don't think he's an executive producer, but several of the ones we watched were written by Paul Dini, who, if you don't know him, he basically was the architect of Batman the Animated Series, and he invented Harley Quinn and Emerson Grad, might I add. But so they actually got real talent to work on. They got girl ones, and they all speak English, and there's a lot more character, but it resembles Star Wars a lot less. It's more like Gummy Bears or Care Bears. Like just like a Saturday morning NBC bear cartoon, but it ain't bad. There's like actual talent kind of on display. It's a real departure from what the weird kind of shit the movies were doing. I just, it was a fascinating. Some of the special effects are embarrassing, man. Like,
I'm sure
you can't believe what you're looking at.
Made for TV. Yeah, it's an era that is so interesting, especially because between the end of Jedi and then to the special editions, I assume there was nothing.
Yeah, and these are it's as though they were overproduced. They really overproduced Ewok content and under distributed. Let's make a shitload of it and hide it.
Like I said, I didn't know they existed. I was a Star Wars fan who had Ewok action figures. I should have known.
There was one kid that was sort of my friend. He was the type of kid that wanted to play outside all the time, and I didn't want to play outside. And so I was always and he had Star Fox 64, but he he couldn't give a fuck about it. I'm like, can we please play Star Fox 64?
Can you give it to me? I want it.
Yeah, just hand it over. His dad was one of those guys who goes to Rent-A-Center and gets a home theater system, but like they have like a little apartment, and he had the Ewok adventure movies on VHS, and he was like, "Have you seen the Ewok movies?" And I was like, "No, I feel like I should probably watch those though. I love Star Wars." And I remember we watched maybe a scene, and I was like, this is not Star Wars. Please turn it off.
This is not it.
Like they keep
Where's
making
Luke?
reference to a Star Cruiser. Is that even something that's said in Star Wars? Like, no, like I think they call it a space cruiser or Star Cruiser. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Check it out.
Check it out. Disney Plus.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.